Yeah.
while we kind of give the,
Yeah, no problem. I got
Just a
time.
few housekeeping items. We had one issue with the photo contest. We had some members actually uploaded their own pictures to the contest albums. So I'm going to send out an announcement to everybody about the process. But basically, the albums on Meetup that are for the contest are the ones that I take care of, and the other ones for events, everybody's free to upload to. We still have a meeting, an open meeting date in March where we don't have an event or don't have a topic. If you want, I'd be willing to give that presentation on masking, the new masking in Lightroom and Photoshop, if folks are interested, or we could do a critique night. So why don't, you know, if you're interested in either one of those, Lightroom and Photoshop masking or critique night, send me a note on Meetup and we'll make a decision. And Greg, is Greg here? Yes, he is. Greg, you were talking at one time about doing a presentation on inspiration as a photographer. Would you be willing to do that at some point in the future?
Maybe towards the middle to the end of the year at the moment.
Okay.
I'm working on something else in the beginning of the year.
Okay, but it's one of those things you're willing to consider it.
Yes.
Okay, I'll put that down and I'll get you a note out to figure out what we're going to do.
I do belong to a different photo club out of Virginia Beach, and back in the fall they did a photo book where everybody brought in one of their favorite photo books and explained why that was interesting or why that was their favorite book.
Oh, okay.
So
we can consider that one too. Next little item, we should probably schedule a photo walk at some point. So if anybody has good ideas on someplace interesting or new that they might want to go, that we can go to, drop me a note and we'll see about scheduling that.
well, since we got everybody, can I throw one out to everybody?
Sure.
The 13th, I'm doing a whale watch with the other camera club. But they're seeing a lot of whales and dolphins and so forth out of Virginia Beach at the, shoot, I just lost the name of it, but out of the one of the whale watch. Would anybody be interested? It's about $35. If we got enough, I'd see about scheduling another one. My grandkids want to go, so I got to do it again anyway. So got to make it a club event.
Sound.
Okay.
So post if you're interested and let me know. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Fred.
Huh?
I said hello, Fred.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We've got, oh, someone left. Anyway, we've got about 18 or 19 people if we want to go ahead and get started. If that was all you had, Phil.
Well, I had two more items.
Okay.
Short on things that are happening. April 1st and 2nd is the Daffodil Festival in Gloucester.
Okay.
And don't forget the Ansel Adams exhibit at the Torgler Arts Center at Christopher Newport goes through March 5th. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Did you want to do the presentation first and we'll end with the photo contest winners?
Yep. We'll let Mike do his thing.
Okay.
And I lost a sheet. I had some notes down to introduce him, but anyway, this is it. Your last name? Am I saying it right? Moats?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. This is Mike Moats. I've been following him. He does macro photography. I've been following him actually on Facebook for a number of years. And then he happened to do a presentation at the other camera club that I'm with. So I figured, oh, I might as well try and see if he'll come over here. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Looking forward to it. But I'm going to let him introduce himself and go ahead and start his presentation. So I'm not, I don't know how to do all of the sharing. So whoever does that, Kemp or Phil, that's up to you guys. You can let him roll.
I'll share the screen.
Okay. I don't know how to do any of it.
Yeah, I've done enough of them. All right, so I'm not gonna spend any time talking by myself. You can go to my website. There's an about page there and it'll tell you all you need to know about me. I've been doing this for full time for about 19 years now. All right, you see my image there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start off with my equipment. I have gone over to the dark side about a year ago and I bought a mirrorless camera. And I have to say that I am very, very happy and impressed with this Fuji X-T30 Mark II. And I'm using the Tamron. I'm sponsored by Tamron, so they provide me with lenses and they gave me the 18-300 lens for it. And it's been a great combination so far. What I like about the mirrorless is that, as you can see, there's my D7500 camera up above, and it's like half the size of that camera. And so a little bit taking, getting used to the smaller body and that, but now it's just fits natural. But it's got some nice features that I like better than my DSLR, but I'm going to keep my DSLR in 18-400 for a while yet. All right, there's a guy named Bill Fortney. Some of you may have heard of him. He's been in the photo business for over 40
You can turn all the
years.
lights off if you need.
Oh, we'll need everybody to mute themselves. Is your tech person there? Can you mute everybody?
Yeah,
And
I'll
if you
mute everybody, then you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'll unmute once I get muted. One time I had a lady making a dentist appointment in the background. No, there I am. All right. Okay, you hear me now? Oh, give me a thumbs up. Okay. So Bill Fortney.
Oops. I accidentally unmute. There you go.
Okay. And Bill worked for Nikon for about 10 years, and I ran into him at a photo conference that I was speaking at. And Bill says, Mike, he says, I know you're using our D7000 camera. He said, it's a good camera, but how come you're not using the professional bodies that we sell? I says, Bill, about 60% of the people that come through my workshops are using camera bodies that are under $1,000. If I'm using your $6,500 camera, those people are going to leave my workshop saying, well, Mike's images look really good because he's got an expensive professional camera and my camera's under $1,000. So I'm not going to get images as good as Mike can get. So all my cameras that I've owned have been under $1,000. And that is to make the point to the people that come to my workshops that you don't have to have an expensive camera for macro photography. So that D7500 Nikon sold for $899, and my Fuji X-T30 Mark II also sold for $899. So again, to make the point that you don't have to have an expensive camera. I could take Canon's got a new DSLR that sells for $350, and I could take that camera and produce images I could get published in magazines. So whatever you own will do just fine. Now, I wouldn't tell you that any of these cameras under $1,000 would be good choice for other types of photography, because some photographers might need high frames per second. They might need real high ISO with low noise. So everybody requires a little different things, and you might have to spend more money on different types of photography. But for macro, none of those things matter. We can get by with anything you have or you own. My macro lens is a 90mm Tamron, sold for $649. The 18-400 and for my DSLR is $649. My 18-300 is $699. My tripod's $220, and my ball head's $369. So there are camera bodies that sell for more than all my equipment together. You don't have to spend a lot of money to be a macro photographer, and that's one nice thing. Now the macro lenses, they come in short range, mid range, and long range focal lengths. These are the most common that you find. These are the ones that I see in my workshops all the time. There are a few that are in between these numbers, but they're kind of rare. You don't see them very often, but these are the most common ones. Now in the short focal length, in a 60mm would be the Tamron, Nikon, and Canon. Sigma is actually a 50. In the mid-range, Tamron on the low end of the 90, and then you go to the 100mm would be the Canon, 105 would be a Sigma and Nikon, and in the telephoto range lenses on the low end would be the 150 from Sigma, The 180 is Tamron, Sigma, and Canon. And then the 200 millimeter, which is the longest of the true macro lenses, is a Nikon. Now, one thing that has happened recently in the last couple of years now is that these lens companies are discontinuing making these lenses for DSLR cameras. Tamron no longer offers any macro lenses new for DSLR camera bodies. They've discontinued all of them. They're spending all their time and energy in producing lenses for mirrorless cameras now, because that's kind of the future. On the telephoto end, almost all those lenses that you see there are not offered anymore. Even Sigma and Canon and Nikon are discontinuing their telephoto macro lenses for the DSLRs. The ones that will be available would be like the Canon 100, the Sigma 105, and the Nikon 105, the mid ranges, and they might have one or two still available in the short range. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't get these lenses. You would probably just have to buy them used somewhere, or you might be able to find a new one of those lenses on a shelf somewhere in a camera store that's been sitting there for a year or two or whatever. But when I contacted Noah over at Hunt's Photo, I was asking him about all these different lenses. He says they're not available anymore. And I go, wow, that's amazing. But again, these lenses will be available if you want to go onto eBay and look up somebody that might be selling one. In the top right, you'll see a short lens on the camera body, and that is a 60 millimeter Tamron lens. And I'm going to photograph this Rose of Sharon flower. Now, if you know that flower, it's a pretty big flower. It's not a small flower. It's pretty good size. And I'm probably about 12 inches away from that flower with that 60 millimeter. And I want to fill the frame with that flower. So you can see the image in the upper left there. That is the image that I shot with that 60 millimeter lens. And as I say, I wanted to fill the frame with it. Now, the image below the 60 millimeter, you can see a little longer lens on the camera body. That's a 90 millimeter Tamron lens. And in order to get the exact same framing, the same shot that I took like with the 60, when I'm doing it with the 90, I got to back away from that flower to get the same framing on that flower. So that's what we call working distance. So I have gained some working distance once I go to the longer, higher, the longer focal length macro lens. I gain a little working distance between me and that subject. Now, the image on the bottom, you see, that's a 180 macro lens, and you can see I have gained a lot of working distance. Now, in order to get the same shot, the same framing like I did with that 60 millimeter. So why is that important? Well, let's say that that flower was now a live subject like a dragonfly or a butterfly. Probably wouldn't be too happy if I'm using a 60 millimeter and I'm 12 inches from its face. More likely it's going to fly away. So your bug photographers, people that like to shoot live subjects and that, tend to shoot with the longer telephoto macro lenses, so they get that great amount of working distance from the subject. Now, 80% of the people that come through my workshops are using mid-range lenses. So the 90 millimeter Tamron, the 100 Canon, 105 Sigma, or 105 Nikon. And the reason why most of those people end up in that mid-range is because of the cost. See, the telephoto macro lenses tend to be pretty expensive, upward of $1,300–1,500. And most people don't want to spend that much money just on a dedicated macro lens. I don't recommend anything like a 60 millimeter, especially outdoors, because you have to get so close to everything. You're literally on your hands and knees all the time. 60 millimeter works great indoors on tabletop where the subject is up off the ground, on a table, but outdoors it's difficult to work with. So the mid-range is usually where most people end up, because you can get like the 90 and when it was new, sold for $649, and then you get into the Canons and the Nikons and the Sigmas. They might go a little bit higher in price, but that tends to be where most people are comfortable spending money for that dedicated macro lens. Now, a few years ago, lens companies started producing zoom lenses that they said had macro capabilities. Now, they don't shoot in as small as an area as a true macro lens does, but they do shoot a pretty small area. I'll show you in a second. So they've designed these lenses so that you can use them for your wide angles and telephotos, and at the same time, you can get in really close on subjects. The minimum focusing distance is shrunk down considerably on these zoom lenses. The one that I'm using, like I said, is an 18–400 on my DSLR, and then on my mirrorless, it's an 18–300. Now, what I like about these wide ranges is that if I want to show you an environment that I'm working in, like this swampy area where I'm photographing leaves on the water, I can set up that 18-400 and another camera body, set the self timer, and I can take a picture of myself in this environment with that 18mm wide. And then if I'm in a swampy area with some duckweed and little frogs' heads popping out, I've got 400mm where I can reach out and capture subjects at a distance. This works great is in botanical gardens. I was in Mathi Botanical Gardens today in Michigan here, and I was shooting. All I had was my 18-300 on my mirrorless camera, and that's all I used all day. It'll also get in very close. As you can see, this is a cactus flower, and that 18-400 got me in to shoot the full frame of that cactus flower. It'll actually shoot as small as 1.5 by 2.5 inches. That is a pretty small area. Get a ruler out and check it. 1.5 by 2.5 inches. I would say 90%, at least 90% of what I photograph is larger areas than 1.5 by 2.5 inches. So this lens covers 90% of what I do. Now, if I did need to get in smaller than 1.5 by 2.5 inch, like in this little pocket watch here, I could pull out my Tamron 90 and that will get me inside that pocket watch. So I do have the 90 for those rare occasions when I shoot in really small areas, which is not very often. Mainly I'm using those zoom lenses now for everything I shoot. Tripod I use is a Vanguard VEO 3 Plus 263. And it's an excellent tripod for macro photography. It's good for any type of photography, but really good for macro. Has a center post that rises up, and then when it's fully extended, it'll turn into a horizontal position like you see I'm using it here, so I can get over top of subjects with that horizontal center post. Now, Manfrotto's had a tripod for years that did this same thing, went into a horizontal position. But the problem with the Manfrotto is that if I needed to move that camera now closer to that subject or back it up higher away from the subject, you would have to do it by adjusting all three of the legs, which was hard to do. With the Vanguard, it's got a little lever on the side, and once you open that lever, that center post will actually dip down or raise up. So you're able to move the camera closer or farther away from the subject. You can also move the camera out of the way if you're shooting some flowers and you don't want that tripod in front of you. Move it out of the way. The legs will go straight out on that tripod, and you can literally put the base of that tripod right on the ground, and with the center post extended out, you can maneuver the camera anywhere you need to and literally put it on the ground if you wanted to. So excellent tripod for macro. The other really nice feature they built into the VEO series of tripods is that you can unscrew one of the legs from the tripod and turn it into a monopod. So now you go to a botanical garden and they say, well, you can't bring your tripods in. You can always unscrew one of the legs, put your head on it and say, I've got a monopod. And they're usually cool about letting you in with a monopod. So really good features on that tripod, and runs about $220, which in terms of tripods, that's not that expensive. When you look at Gitzo's and some of the other tripods, they're really right stuff in that. Now, most of you probably use a ball head, and ball heads have a big metal heavy housing that supports the ball up at the top of the big metal heavy housing. And it also has this little U slot in the front here. Let me show you that right there, a little U slot. Now, landscape and wildlife photographers very rarely, if they do at all, use that because they're shooting straight ahead all the time. But macro photographers shoot down towards the ground, and so we use that U slot to maneuver that ball head down into that slot, and then we can photograph subjects that might be on the ground. So we're a little bit limited. We have to work within a U slot, and then we might have to pivot the ball head back and forth to get into position. So a little bit of effort, not terrible, but I mean, a little extra effort. The ball head that I'm using is made by Acratech, ACRATECH, and it is called the Ultimate Ball Head. Now you can see it's a totally different look to the ball head. They've cut away all that big metal housing like you saw in the other one. So it makes it super lightweight. It's also made of aluminum, which also makes it super lightweight. So that's nice, having a lighter head to work with. The key to this head is the front area where they've cut away all this front area right here. So now when I go to move my camera into position for framing my subject, I have full range of movement. I'm not working any U slot and pivoting the ball head back and forth. I can literally move to any position I need to go with that open face on that front of that ball head. So that is excellent, excellent head for macro photography. And again, also good for any type of photography, but really stands out as a great head for macro photography. Not inexpensive, but not super expensive. It runs $369. So again, there's a lot of ball heads that are more expensive than that, but there's also a lot of ball heads that are a lot cheaper. Now, I don't have time to cover all the accessories tonight because I've got other important things to cover, but I want to make sure you covered the most important accessory, and that's a diffuser, or some people might call it a translucent. This is a Dame's rocket flower that I photographed, and you can see the top portions of the petals of the flower are kind of a pink color, but they're not supposed to be pink. They're supposed to be purple. Now, you know that some days, if it's really sunny and harsh light overhead, noontime, you'll get some washed out colors. This was actually photographed on a cloudy day. So even on cloudy days, you can get enough intensity of light from those clouds and reflection of those white clouds coming down and washing out colors on anything that's running kind of parallel to the clouds. So what we need to do is take our diffuser. I use a 12-inch diffuser. They do make it in 22 and 20 and 22. I always use the 12 because just more compact. I can collapse it down into itself to about 4 inches across and actually put it right in my front pocket. So I've always used the 12-inch for 20 years now, and it's worked just great for me. But if you want to use a larger one, they do make them in 20 and 22. Now, once I put the diffuser over top of that Dame's rocket flower you just saw, it brings the color back to the purple it's supposed to be. So you can see the image on the left, no diffuser, image on the right with the diffuser. It's like a magic trick when you see it happen. You're seeing, this flower which has lost its color, and you put the diffuser over it and the color just pops right out on it. So again, this is a cloudy day. You'd assume, hey, we already have a giant diffuser up there, but there's a reflection off those clouds and intensity off those clouds that does wash out things that are running parallel to it. On the same cloudy day, I'm walking down a trail. I look over, I see this leaf. I could see the top of the leaf. The color was washed out. And you remember what I said, things that are running parallel to those clouds is what's going to wash out that color. The front of the leaf is running 90 degrees to the clouds, and it retains its color. So we put our diffuser over there to bring that color back on the top, and we get some of that color back on the top. Now, the color is not as deep and intense as it is in front of the leaf, but at least there's enough color there that now I can go into my post-processing and I can darken down the top portion to match up with the front portion. With the image on the left here with no diffuser, washed out colors, there's no color there to work with. It'd be very difficult if you could even bring that back to match up with the front of the leaf. So again, very important to have that diffuser even on cloudy days. Now, let's say we have a sunny day we're working with, which happens quite often in the summertime. I'm going to diffuse my subject 100% of the time. I never let sunlight hit my subject unless I'm using sunlight for special effect like backlighting. But I'm going to diffuse 100% of the time. And the reason being is there's three things that happen when sun hit your subject. It can alter the color of your subject and actually change the color. It can create that kind of washed out look if it's the right angle of the light and all that. And it can also create shadows in areas that I might not want shadows. So three bad things happen. Now, this image on the left side is a sumac branch. That is early morning sunlight hitting that branch. And early morning sunlight has a warm feel to the light. And what's happening is that those green leaves have turned to kind of a yellowish green leaves. And also, I mentioned about shadows. You can see I get a little shadow here in this one. Nothing serious, but there is some shadow happening in there. Sometimes it's more pronounced on certain subjects. So I need to diffuse that subject. So once I put the diffuser between the subject and the sunlight, the image on the right side is the natural green that the sumac is. And also I got rid of those little shadows in the leaves on the right side. So again, I'm diffusing 100% of the time when I'm out shooting in sunlight. Never let the sunlight hit my subject. Cloudy days, I'm still going to be carrying that diffuser because as you saw, even on cloudy days, you can run into a problem. Now you might end up using your diffuser indoors too. If I'm shooting a subject that has a little bit of a sheen to it and the light's coming at the right angles, it can hit that subject and cause little white hot spots. So I'm going to shade that too. Now, some people say, well, you could, get rid of that, the little hot spots on a shiny area with a polarizer. I tried that in the very beginning, 20 years ago with polarizers, and they didn't work 100% of the time. See, they have to be at the right angle of the light before they work properly. And so they only work some of the time. Diffusers work 100% of the time. Diffusers are going to cost you about 12 to 15 bucks. A good polarizer is going to cost you a couple $100. So get yourself a 12-inch diffuser and make sure you always have it with you when you go out in the field. Now you're wondering, do I have to hold this thing all the time? You could if you wanted to. You could just hold it with your hand, or you could buy a Wimberley clamp. And you can see on the left side, you got the large clamp there and a little small clamp on the other side. Now, you can clamp this onto your tripod leg. And I've got this little flower here that I'm going to photograph. So I'm going to shade that flower with my clamp here attached to my tripod leg, and the other end's got my diffuser on it. Now, let's say that you are using a long 180 or 200 millimeter macro lens and you're 3 feet away from that subject. If you attach that to your tripod leg, it won't reach out far enough to get that diffuser over top of that flower. So what Wimberley did is they created a stake system. It's just a hollow tube they see here. And when you get it, it'll have a screwdriver that is attached inside the tube. You pull the screwdriver out, reverse it, stick it back in the tube, and then you can stick your stake in the ground next to your flower. And then you can take your clamp, hook it on the stake, and that'll hold your diffuser over top of the subject. And then you're free to move your camera around without having that attached to your tripod leg. So stake is really important. If you're going to get the clamp, you really need to get the stake too. Stake runs about $25, I think. And the clamps are usually around $40, $45. And Hunts has them, all the big, photo places have them. You might not be able to find them at your local camera store. Some small camera stores probably don't sell them, but go to the big stores and they'll have them. Also, you can see here where they show it stake in the ground, clamp attached to the stake, and then on the other end, it's actually clipped onto a stem of a flower. So let's say you're out, it's got a slight wind, your flower's moving back and forth. You can always just clamp it on the stem there. Has some foam that's inside of that clamp so it won't damage the stem of the flower. Camera settings, my ISO on my D7500 is set at 1000. And when I got the mirrorless camera last year, I talked to one of the tech reps over at Fuji, and I asked him about, how high can I shoot this with the ISO? He says, oh, you can go really high on that camera. I says, well, how about 2000? He goes, oh, no problem. So I have it set at 2000 and it works just great. I have no problems with the quality or any noise in the images. Now, as far as your settings, manual, aperture priority, you can do either one. For many, many, many years, I shot manual because that's kind of how I learned when I first started over 20 years ago. And you would set the f-stop, and then you would set your shutter speed, your exposure manually. You can just set your camera on aperture priority and just set your f-stop. That's the most important thing. Set in your f-stop to get the right amount of depth of field, and then you can let the camera take over on the shutter speed and do your exposure for you. F-stops, the type of photography I like to do is everything in focus, and I'm shooting 22 up to 32. But there are other styles I shoot, which I'll talk about, where we shoot in the small f-stops, the 2.8s, 3.5s. All right, I do all my indoor flower photography on my stairway in my foyer. And the reason why I shoot there is because that is a 2-story high foyer, and the front of the house has a massive big window at the top, second floor. And that floods that stairway with beautiful natural light. It just seems to come in and wrap itself even around the subjects. It's great. So that's where I do all my flower photography. Now, one of the things about shooting indoors is, on my stairs here, I obviously don't want stairs as my background behind my flowers. So I have to put some kind of a background behind it. Now, when I first started out, I was shooting with black fleece, felt, black felt. I was using white backgrounds. And so all my flower photography, was just black and white backgrounds, and it just never looked natural to me. I wanted my flower shots to look like I may have shot it out in the field somewhere with green grasses, blown out in the background. So what I did was I went out and started making my own backgrounds. So here I am out shooting some grass, just got my tripod set up. Now, if you're going to do this, you best to do it with a macro lens. It works best with a macro lens rather than the zoom lenses. Want to set your f-stop to the smallest f-stop. So if your lens is 2.8 or 3.5, whatever the smallest one, set it at the smallest f-stop. Now I have focused on this grass here just to show you what it looks like when it's in focus. Now, when you are manually focusing with your hand on your focusing ring, you know that when you get that subject in focus, if you take your focusing ring a little bit left or a little bit right of the focus point where it's in focus, it starts to go soft and out of focus. So what you want to do is take your focusing ring and rotate it to the right, quite a few spins to the right, and then maybe quite a few spins to the left. And one of the two ways, one will do it better than the other, but on mine, it's going to the right side tends to work the best. So when I spin my lens to the my focusing ring to the left or the right side, it'll take that grass that you just saw completely out of focus. It'll go to a solid color. And when it gets to that solid color, you photograph it and you end up with that right there. So that grass you see right there, when it's in focus, when I take the focusing ring and I rotate it to the right side, quite a few turns, it'll actually take it completely out of focus and end up looking like that. And that is the same natural green of grass that I get when I'm shooting flowers and I blur out that grass in the background behind my subject. So now I can print these out and use them as backgrounds when I'm shooting indoors. Now, if you're shooting a different subject and you don't want to have a solid color, maybe you want to leave a little blotchiness in there, maybe a little texture, just don't take it to a solid color. Just, keep rotating the focusing ring till you get to a point where it looks good. You photograph it and you get a different look in your image. Get a little bit of that kind of blotchiness, a little bit of texture in there. If you're shooting grasses with little yellow flowers, you're going to end up with a more yellowish green. If you get some purple flowers in there, you're going to get some purples and greens. And I like to go to botanical gardens where I can shoot different types of flowers and blur them out and get different shades and colors like that. And then you have a whole set of backgrounds that you can use when you're shooting your flowers. Now, what you want to do is print these on matte paper. As you can see up here, it says matte. That's what you want. You don't want glossy papers. You don't want any semi-gloss, no lusters. You want matte paper. It has no sheen on it. Because if you're using anything with a shine to it and you angle it at the right angle, the light hits it, it's going to kind of wash it out a little bit or cause hot spots. So use matte paper. If you don't want to go out and shoot your own, you could always go to Hobby Lobby or Michael's Crafts or someplace and buy solid color paper. They have all kinds of different colors of paper you can buy. Or if you want, you could be really adventurous and get yourself some fly paper textures. These are textures that they sell like 40 textures for, I don't know, $40 or something like that. And you can print those onto your matte paper, and then you could use these nice textured backgrounds behind your subject. I think it's flypapertextures.com where you go to, and they have all types of different kinds of backgrounds that you can buy, and they'll send you the file, or you can download the file and then you can just print them out. Now, as far as backboards, you want to have something to stiffen these prints up, because there's just going to be these floppy pieces of paper, right? So you want to either use like matte board, like we use for matting our pictures when we frame them, or foam core, which they use for the backing of pictures when we frame them, or just cardboard, anything a stiff material like that. Now, what you want to do is get yourself some carpet tape, because carpet tape has adhesive on both sides of the tape, both sides. So that way you can cut off some strips, put it on your backboard, and then as you can see here, you pull the tape off so it exposes the glue on this side, and you pop your print right onto that backboard, and it'll stick really, really well on there. All right, so when I ask macro photographers, what are they struggling with it's always the same answer. It's depth of field. They don't understand how much depth of field they get at all the different f-stops, and they don't understand even what f-stop they should be using when they shoot macro. So we're going to cover that. That is the number one problem for people shooting macro, because when we get in really close to our subject, our depth of field shrinks down to almost nothing. It's amazing how small of an area it is. Now, these are two different style images here, both opposites, okay? One on the left is a soft focus flower image. It's a real popular style amongst flower photographers where they get very little in focus and a lot out of focus. So you can see here, all I have in focus is this little, probably about an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch in focus right here. And then everything around it is all softened into a nice kind of dream-like look. And again, it's a very popular style. A lot of people use lens babies to achieve this. They get that soft look with a lens baby. And there's some lady photographers like, Jackie Kramer and Ann Belmont, Jerry Jones, Kathleen Clemens, who do exclusively, lens babies with this style, soft focus flowers. I don't do a lot of it. I like it, but I'm more of a everything in focus guy. I will tell you this though, and I've experienced this when I was in the art show business for 7 years, many years ago, that people don't understand soft focus images. If you're showing these images to your family members or friends that are non-photographers, non-artistic type people, the first thing out of their mouth when they see these images is, why is it out of focus? See, because they use point and shoot cameras, they use their camera phones, and what do those do really well? They get it all in focus. So they don't understand why you'd want an image where so much is out of focus, but it is a style that macro photographers tend to like. Now, the image on the right side here, that's a big agave, and you can see that is all in focus from top to bottom, side to side, front to back. And that requires an f32 to get that all in focus from front to back. So two different, f32 for everything focus, and then for soft focus, 2.8, 3.5. Now, these are examples of soft focus images. Again, it's a Trillium. I've used a 180 macro lens at 3.5, smallest f-stop. All I did was focus on the edge of the petal here, and all I've got is a little bit in focus at that small f-stop. And then as you can see, it softens the flower down and then blurs the background to a solid color. Same with this guy here, just focus on his face, use the smallest f-stop, blurred out his body and his wings, and the grass in the background blurred to a solid color. Just like I was showing you earlier where I was taking a picture of that grass out of focus. I get this all the time when I'm shooting out in the field where I blur out that grass to a solid color. It's a goat's beard seed head, and all I did was focus on this little area of the stem right here, and with the smallest f-stop, again, 2.8 on a 90mm macro lens, softened into that dream-like look that you see. Now we're going to the opposite end of that lens, f32. You can see everything in focus again, top to bottom, side to side, front to back. And this flower here, f32, I've posted this many times over the years, and I always get people say, hey, did you focus stack that? I go, no, I don't need to focus stack. I've got an f32 in my lens that'll get enough depth of field where I do not have to do focus stacking. It's a waste of time, okay? This frog shot was f32. So this was done quite a few years ago, but I had an article that was being published in Outdoor Photographer magazine, and this was part of that article. And the editor emailed me, he says, you listed the f-stop on that frog shot at f32. Did you make a mistake on that? And I says, no, I shot it at f32. I says, you have the file. I says, you can go look it up. So about an hour later, he emails me back. He says, you know what? I did. I looked at the file. It says f32. I says, yeah, I told you that. I says, yeah, I shoot a lot at f32. He says, I just never heard anybody shooting that high of an f-stop, because most photographers tell you should never shoot over f16. And we'll talk about that in a second. Diffraction. All right. So all you out there scratching your head going, Mike, you're not supposed to be shooting at f-stop, higher than 16, because you get into 22 to 32, you start getting diffraction. Inside your lens, it has an aperture that opens and closes as you change your f-stop. Over on the left side, you'll see an f2.8, and that aperture is wide open in your lens. And so like when someone says, I shot this wide open, they mean that the aperture inside the lens was wide open. Now, if you go to the higher f-stops, you start to see that aperture inside the lens starts to get to a smaller opening and a smaller opening, a smaller opening until you get to 22, and it's at a very small opening, or 32 would be really small. So that light that's coming from the subject you're shooting at f/22 or 32, when it's trying to get through your lens, it's trying to squeeze through that little tiny aperture opening. And as it's moving through that little opening, it has a tendency to kind of shift and move a little bit, so that when the image and the light hits your sensor, it creates softness in the details of the subject you shot. It doesn't give you the sharpest quality out of your lens. Lens company will tell you to shoot at f/8 if you want the least amount of diffraction. You'll get the sharpest quality out of the lens shooting at f/8. And that's where most landscape and wildlife photographers tend to try to shoot in that range. And that's why people tell you never shoot over f/16, because it's starting to get into too much diffraction. Now, this image was shot at f/32. And because of the depth of the subjects I tend to shoot, there's a lot of depth from front to back. And when you're in really close like this, your depth of field, as you'll see in a little bit later, shrinks down to very little. So I'm using f/32 to get that all in focus, because I like my subjects all in focus. Now, as you can see, this is out of the camera. It's a little soft. You know, it's not terrible soft, but it is soft. All the details of this thing is a little on the soft side. And that is the diffraction. That's the softness that happens from the diffraction. Now, I will tell you this too, that lenses that are produced in today's digital world are better lenses as far as handling diffraction than they were back in the older days and the film days and that. So you don't get as much diffraction out of the new lenses because they're better technology's been put into them. But there is still some diffraction there. Now, the nice thing about digital photography is that we have these post-processing programs, these awesome programs that we have, whether it's, you know, Photoshop or Nik software, Topaz. I use Smart Photo Editor for all my processing, but all these companies will offer you, or they'll have built into your program, a sharpening program. Okay. And those sharpening programs, that's what they're designed to do, is to help sharpen your image if they're not real sharp. So we do have a tool that can correct that diffraction. So once I crop this image, run it through my post-processing, sharpen it, there it is there. So it's very sharp, as you can see. So I've achieved the depth of field I wanted, and I've also achieved the sharpness I want by using my sharpening tools in my post-processing. So again, you don't have to be fearful of shooting at high f-stops. I've been doing this since 2004 when I started digital, and I had a tool to correct the softness from the diffraction. Here's another image, another little sunflower that I was photographing, and again, wanted to get all that in focus. So I cropped it and focused and sharpened it, and there it is right there. Now, I tend to sharpen a lot. I like really tack, sharp looking images. You don't have to do them as sharp as I do. You have the ability to make the adjustment on your sharpness as whatever you want. I like them really sharp, so I tend to sharpen them a lot. The image on the left, another set of sunflowers that had a lot of depth from the front to the back. And again, f/32 to get that all in focus. Now, the image on the right side, that is a book cover. And you can see the book is named Group F/64. Now, back in the 40s, I think it was, Ansel Adams, the most famous of all photographers, and Edward Weston, another real famous photographer from that same time frame, and 5 other photographers started a camera club in California, and that club was called Group F/64. And their philosophy is we want our images to be all in focus from front to back, side to side, top to bottom, just like I'm showing you. And so what they did was they shot at f/64 to achieve maximum depth of field of their lenses they were using. Most people don't realize what Ansel Adams was shooting at, because most people never heard about it. But this book explains it all, and it's very interesting. And you'll see pictures in the book of that, of what they shot, and that was the philosophy of the group, was get it all in focus, shoot at high f-stop to get maximum depth of field. Hey, if it's good enough for Ansel Adams, it's good enough for me. All right, I want to show you just how shallow this depth of field is when you're shooting in those small f-stop numbers. And this is the problem that macro photographers run into. Most photographers that I run into are always telling me they're shooting in those small f-stops. And I go, why? Well, I don't know. I just thought you're supposed to shoot down there. I go, no, you don't have to shoot down there. So I have this ruler on the table. I've got the front of my 90 millimeter Tamron lens at an angle to that ruler. So in other words, I'm not parallel to the ruler like you'd like to be if you're shooting a subject. You like to try to get parallel if it's a flat subject, but you're not always going to be able to get parallel to subjects. Sometimes you're going to be shooting things where you're going to be on an angle, and that's going to increase the depth of field of the subject when you go on that angle like that. You have to learn how to control that and what f-stops you need to get that in focus. So on the left, 2.8 f-stop. All I'm getting in focus at that ruler is 1 tiny eighth of an inch. That's what I'm talking about. Very shallow depth of field when we get in really close to these subjects. And even the line just outside of the 1/8 of an inch that's in focus is already starting to go soft. And then as you can see at the top and bottom, it eventually goes into a blur. Now the image on the right side is f32. The ruler's all in focus. And that's what I'm talking about. I want maximum depth of field. I'm going to the highest f-stop. And I'm not going to worry about the diffraction because I know I can correct that. All right. Now, this is a spruce cone that I hung 4 feet in front of the spruce tree. Remember that tree's 4 feet behind that cone. Now I'm using a 180 macro lens at the time, and I shot it at 3.5, which is the smallest f-stop on the 180. And I've got the front of the lens parallel to the front of the cone, which is flat. So you can see at 3.5, even though I'm using very small amount of depth of field, I can still get that cone in focus because I'm parallel to the flat part. But where that cone dips down right here to the tip, just that little bit of a tip is out of focus already. Just that little variance from the front down to the tip. And the needles in the foreground, as you can see, are out of focus as well. All right, now look what's happening at that tree at 4 feet behind the cone. It blurs it almost to a solid color, right? Because 3.5 doesn't have enough depth of field to reach back 4 feet. And anything that's in that range back there is just going to be a solid blur, which is nice. We like to have that nice clean background behind our subject. Problem is I want my subject all in focus. So I'm going to need to get more depth of field to get my subject in focus. I'm going to have to go to a higher f-stop. So now I'm going to go to f8. Now f8 does a better job getting the cone all in focus. See, the tip of the cone's in focus. But the needles are still not totally in focus. Some of these needles are still soft up front here. But look what happens to the tree in the background at 4 feet. F8's got just enough depth of field to start pulling in some shading of the needles back there. You don't see any real hard definition too much, but you do start to see some shading, colors of shades and stuff. So it's starting to clutter up my background. Not terrible, but it's starting to get a little bit messy back there. So I want to get those needles in the very foreground way up here in focus too, right up there. And I'm going to go to a higher f-stop. I'm just going to double it and go to a 16. Now 16's got plenty of depth of field, and it gets it all in focus. Every part of the needles, the cones, everything's in focus. That's what I want. Now here's my problem. F16's got more depth of fields, reaching back and pulling in those needles. Now I'm starting to see definition in the needles in that spruce tree at 4 feet. That's not good. I don't want that. All right, so that's where macro photographers always complain, and they complain they shoot into small f-stops to blur out the backgrounds when they're close, but they don't get enough depth of field in a subject, and then they go to the higher f-stop to get the subject in focus. Then they bring in the background, and it clutters up their background. So these are images that I photographed out in the field, all right, where I got the subject all in focus, like this flower here, and a nice clean background behind it. Same with this jewel weed. Little dewdrops and leaf, all in focus, nice clean background behind it. That's just grass way off in the distance. And another flower shot with nice clean background. Our critter portraits, so we want our critters to be in focus as well and have that nice clean background. And little hoverfly on a knapweed flower and nice clean background. And a dewy covered dragonfly with a pond in the background that turned into that nice blue color. All right. This is what we don't want. We don't want messy clutter in our background. We want to clean that up like that. All right, so this is the key to flower and critter portraits. This is how you get it done. This is how you get the subject in focus and still maintain that blurred background. You got to find the right subject. And what I mean by the right subject, I mean you need to find a subject that is isolated away from clutter. All right, then you got to find the camera angle to that subject with the background as far away as possible. And the farther the background is away from that subject, the higher the f-stop gets to go. In other words, if it's 4 feet, you might, only shoot it at in the smaller f-stops, but you don't get enough depth of field. But if that can move away to 10 feet or 20 feet, then you can go into the higher f-stops. You remember the Dames rocket flower that I shot where I used the diffuser to bring the color back? This is the day I shot it. This is a cloudy day, and you can see these flowers grow in a big cluster. All right. They're very difficult to shoot because none of the flowers in this clusters are going to work for what I want to do. Because if I photograph any one of these flowers in here, where's the background? Literally inches behind the main subject. That's not going to work. So when you get into these areas where the flowers are all clustered together like that, you got to go to the outside perimeters, and you'll find these single flowers growing by themselves out here. That's what you want to look for, right? Or maybe some of the ones that are up above, up high, where there's nothing behind them. So anyways, I found this one right there, and that's the one that I photographed. And you can see it's all by itself. See, that's what I was saying. Find the right subject, find the isolated subject away from the clutter. Now that background, you could either use the woods back there if you wanted a darker background. It's probably 20 feet away from that flower. Or you could shoot at an angle so the grass would be off in the distance. And I can go ahead and set up my tripod, shoot that at about an f11, maybe an f16, and get that all in focus and blur out that background. There's a little bladder campion flower in this heavy grass. Again, you're not going to shoot that because it's too much clutter around it. But where this grass is growing, this tall grass, some of those flowers had reached up right through that grass and are way up here high. That's what you're looking for right there, because there's nothing behind that but that wooded area, and that wooded area is probably 25, 30 feet away from that flower. So I can get up into that f16 range, shoot that, get it all in focus, and maintain that blurred background. So it's very simple. This is not difficult stuff, as you can see. Here's another situation. I was walking down a trail next to this pond, and you can see these cool little flowers right here. And you can see there's nothing behind those flowers for a good distance away. Now, what I did was I used that kind of light color of the water right there as the background, which is quite often a distance. And that became my background with those flowers. But yeah, they're easy to find, these isolated flowers. And when you can see there's nothing behind it. This one here, that wooded area back there, is probably 100 yards away from that flower. And the grass is way off in the distance too. So you can easily shoot that. I mean, I've shot some of these at f22, got flower all in focus, and still maintain a solid blur background, even at f22. All right, let's go back to the spruce cone. So you remember at 3.5, I was able to blur out that background because the 3.5 doesn't have enough depth of field to reach back to 4 feet. But I didn't get enough depth of field on my subject. Went to f8, got more depth of field in my subject, but it started to bring in some details. Now, let's say that you could find a different camera angle to that cone, or maybe a different cone where the tree was now 10 feet behind the cone. If the tree's 10 feet behind the cone, f8 won't have enough reach to go back and pull in any details at 10 feet behind the cone, but I'm going to get more details on my subject. Now, let's say I found another angle to that cone where the tree was now 20 feet behind the cone. Now I'm up in the f11s, f16s maybe, and getting that subject all in focus and maintaining a clean background still. So as you can see, this is really easy stuff. It's just finding the isolated subjects with the background off in the distance, which will allow you to get into those higher f-stops for more depth of field. Now, here's a situation where you're going to run into, everyone does that goes out to shoot macro, is you want to shoot these little white oxeye daisies here. And you can see all through this heavy grass, these flowers are all through this heavy grass right here. So the problem is the backgrounds are way too close to any of these flowers to photograph. So when that happens, you have to learn when to walk away. Rather not shoot a poor image. You'd rather just go and find something else to photograph than try to shoot any of these and have a nasty background behind it. Now, there is an option. Let's say that you really needed to get a shot of that oxeye daisy. There is an option here. You remember the backgrounds I showed you how to make that you're using indoors when you're photographing indoors? Well, guess what? Now you're going to carry them to the outdoors, and you're going to put your background behind that flower and photograph it at as high as f-stop you want. And you're going to have a natural background that's going to look exactly like anything I've shot naturally out there with just using the environment. So I have kind of gotten away from using the system that I just showed you where I'm looking for that isolated flower and spending all that time and trying to get the background. I'm just carrying backgrounds now and using those all the time. I like to teach the other way just to show you that's how it got done, you know, for many, many years. That's how photographers did it. But nowadays I'm just using backgrounds. So here I am shooting Lily of the Valley in the early spring, and Lily of the Valley, as you can see, grows very low to the ground. It's very difficult to shoot, and it is so cluttered that there's no way you can find any one of these where you're going to shoot and have a clean background behind it. So I bring backgrounds out there, and as you can see, I'm using my plamp. Remember the plamp we talked about for your diffuser? Well, now the plamp is being used for holding my background behind my subject. So it's a dual purpose now, see? So all I did was put that background there for just this little area up in here. That's all I needed it for, just to clean up that area right there, because otherwise I'd see different blades of the Lily of the Valley grasses that are going to be going in different angles and cluttering up my background. So I just use it for that little area right there. A lot of times I'll just hold them by my hand, you know, if it's like this flower is up pretty high. So I'll just, you know, stick the background out behind it and hold it there. I was at this Mathai Botanical Garden this morning shooting, and all the flowers I shot, I used my background behind it and just held it there. So the nice thing about using these zoom lenses is that I can now just shoot little larger areas like you see here. And I can, and what's nice about the zoom lenses is you can set up your tripod and just zoom in on the subject to where you want it. Whereas with a macro lens, it's a fixed focal length. You have to move the tripod back and forth to get your framing. Whereas with the zoom lenses, you can just set it up anywhere pretty much and zoom to where you want it. So I set up my, I have a 26 megapixel Fuji camera, and my other one is about, I think it's a 24 meg, my DSLR. But what's nice about having those larger megapixel cameras is that I don't have to be so precise on getting my framing exactly the way I want it. I can just shoot larger areas and then crop it in post-processing, and I still get a good quality image out of it. So this image here, you can see I shot a large area of it, and there's the image after I cropped it and sharpened it. This is a, oh my God, what the heck is that? Lupin. I should know. I'm up in Madeline Island every June shooting these things. Lupin. Beautiful flower, and just again set up my background behind this. It's a small flower. That's print is only an 8.5 by 11. This was a small one. Stuck the background behind it, and there's the crop and the sharpening and the post-processing on it. So I carry mine in my backpack. Now, most all newer backpacks have a opening where you can slide in like a laptop or a notebook into that opening. So I use that opening to put my backgrounds in. Now my backpack is small because I don't carry a lot of equipment. So I can only put an 8.5 by 11 size print into my background or in my backpack. So if you have a larger backpack, you could carry larger backgrounds in size, but I find that I'm typically shooting single flowers, and an 8.5 by 11 print, it works just fine for me. But yeah, it just fits right into that sleeve area within the backpack. And then you can carry a number of different colors and stuff that you can, alter the colors with your subject you're shooting. Give yourself options, shoot multiple f-stops. When you're out in the field shooting a subject, you don't want to just shoot one f-stop and then get home and complain that you don't like the depth of field at that f-stop that you chose. You may not be able to go back and reshoot that subject, and it may not even be there when you go back to reshoot it. So while you're there and you got your setup, shoot 4 to 5 different f-stops, and then you can worry about when you get home which one works out the best. So I would shoot some lower f-stops and then go up into the highest f-stops. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. Now I've got 2 calla lilies. I just set them up in my home with a black background. Just focused up in this area up in here somewhere, and you can see it's a lot of shallowness in that flower in the background, and a little softness on the front flower. That's a 2.8 on the 90mm macro lens. Now, I went to the f8 for the second shot. Now, when I say shoot 4 to 5 different f-stops, I don't mean 4 to 5 different f-stops that are right next to each other, because you wouldn't see hardly any difference in the depth of field. You want to skip a few every time you change. So I went from 2.8, I went up to 8, shot it again. So this is the f8. You can see a little more depth of field coming in there. Then I went up to f11, a little more depth of field coming in. And then I went to f16, more depth of field, more in focus. Then I went to f22, most everything in focus. Still a little soft right down in here, so I could go up to 32 and get that all in focus. But that's 5 shots. So now I can go ahead and look at the 5 different shots. I can say, well, do I like it with all in focus? Or do I want a little bit of softness on the back flower at the f16, or maybe a little more softness at the f11 or the f8, or maximum softness at 2.8. So at least I have 5 options. But if I only shoot one and I'm not happy with what I got, again, if it's out in the field when you're shot it, you may not be able to go back and reshoot it, or it may not be even there when you go back to reshoot it. So while you're set up, make sure you shoot at least 4 to 5 different f-stops, and you got yourself covered when you get home. Woo, all right. So I am done with my program. I got you set up so that you can go out and shoot and do exactly what I do. And it's simple, like you see, not difficult. I started a macro photo club 5 years ago. And my goal was to create instructional videos teaching people how to do macro photography. And today here, 5 years later, I have over 260 instructional videos that cover 4 categories. So there's about over 100 of them of me out in the field, actually shooting, photographing things and showing you how to do it and talking about f-stops and all that. I've got about 50 videos on equipment. I've got 30 some videos on composition and over 30 videos on post-processing. We have a Facebook group for our members, and I've got about 1,400 of the members on the Facebook group sharing their images every day and asking questions and that. And it says there we have 2,600 members. We actually just hit 2,700 members yesterday. The 2,700th member just signed up from 28 different countries. It's amazing. All over the world. All right. So if you're interested in joining a lifetime membership, you only pay one time, never pay again. You'll always have access to the videos. It's $99. And the website to sign up is at tinylandscapes.com. Once you go to the website, just look at the top. You'll see a bunch of links. Look at the center there. It says Macro Photo Club. Click on that. I'll give you some more information about the club and then also how to sign up. So, okay, gang. I'm more than happy to hang around if you have any questions. I'll unshare my screen here and get back to where I can see y'all. All right. All right, Marie, you can unmute.
Yep.
All right. So if anybody has any questions, they can unmute and ask or put it in the chat box, I guess, whatever. Or did I cover everything so well there's no questions?
I was going to ask one, but you finally answered it at the end of towards the end. So
Yeah, that's why we don't like to ask questions during the program, because all the time when somebody asks questions, like, oh, it's coming up. Just wait.
it's coming up.
I
Yeah,
covered it all pretty well.
You did.
I
Looks like
did have one. I did have a question.
Yeah.
Are you kind of on the side of the macro zooms these days? And the reason I ask is I'm doing digitization of old slides and negatives.
Yeah.
And I've got a 90 millimeter macro to do that. And I mean, it works fine on a copy stand.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you think maybe at some point, if I ever expand my macro photography, that a zoom macro is the way to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you see, when I was showing you how small of an area you can photograph with that lens, 1.5 by 2.5 inches, it's pretty small. And then of course, if you have larger megapixel cameras with the zoom, you could always, if you had capturing a larger area than the slide or whatever it is you're photographing, you can just crop it out. But I would probably use the macro lens, because it'll get you in closer to the subject where, the zoom lens will be a little farther back than the macro lens would probably be. And then also you can get in tighter on that image, with the macro lens, because you'd rather fill the frame with it and then not have to crop any if you don't have to. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I had a question because I shoot Fuji as well.
Gregory's been waiting
since a bit now. He had spoken
I don't
first.
see
think.
Gregory.
I have my hand up.
His hand up. Did he
I
just
have a-
leave?
We don't
Can
see
you,
him.
can you hear
Yeah,
me?
there he is.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is, what's the difference between a 90 millimeter lens and a 90 millimeter macro lens? What makes a
ni-
macro lens?
Well, the millimeter should be the same, right? Oh, well,
Yeah,
the macro lens will focus in closer because it has what they call extension built into the lens. You know, like
Okay.
you'll hear people say, I have a regular lens and I'm going to add extension tubes between the body and the lens.
Yeah.
And that allows that lens to move in closer to the subject. Well, a macro lens already has the extension built right into the body.
Okay.
So that's the difference between a macro lens and a 90 millimeter lens, is it just allows you to get in closer to the subject with it. And
What are
then,
your feelings on extension tubes?
well, I don't use them because my macro lens will shoot down to about 7/8 of an inch by an inch and 3/8. I never shoot that small of an area just with the macro lens. So the only reason I would use extension tubes is to allow me to focus into a smaller area or higher magnification, which I never do. So I never have any use for extension tubes. Now, if you had an older zoom lens where the minimum focusing distance was 4 feet from the subject and you wanted to get closer with that, then you could pop on 3 sets, a set of 3 tubes, and then you could get in real close with it with a standard type lens. But if you have a macro lens, unless you want to go into a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, there's no real need for extension tubes, because macro lens will get you into a pretty small area.
Ivy has a question for you.
Yeah, Ivy.
Yeah, so I shoot Fuji as well.
Yeah.
The Tamron lens, do you need an adapter for it to fit the X mount, or
Well,
do
they do.
make one for
No.
Fuji?
Well, the 18-300 that I'm using is designed to go onto the Fuji camera. So there's no converter or anything like that.
Okay.
It just hooks right onto my camera body. So a lot of these companies are starting to come out with more and more lenses for different cameras. Of course, when mirrorless came out, you had to buy Fuji lenses because a lot of the, Tamrons and Sigmas and that didn't have them yet. But now they're working on it. And that's partly why you see that they've kind of gotten away from doing more lenses for DSLRs, like the macro lenses. They're discontinuing all that stuff because they're putting all their energy into making lenses for the mirrorless cameras. So they do have limited amounts for the Fuji and Sony. And I would believe they're going to be working on Nikon and Canon pretty soon too. But Sony owns a piece of Tamron. So they were the first ones that got lenses for their cameras. And so they started making them for Fuji now. And then I'm sure you're going to see that they're going to have them for Nikon and Canon too eventually. Same with Sigma.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? By a group.
Well, like I said, I covered it so well.
You did. You did very well.
Yes.
Just no questions. Yeah.
I have to agree. It was very thorough.
Yeah, if you go to my website, you'll see I've got different, all kinds of different images there, critters and plants and flowers and man-made subjects and cars and all kinds of stuff that I shoot. And so I do a lot of variety of all types of macro photography of all different subjects. And it'll give you ideas for subject matter. I mean, you'll see things there that you might have never thought to photograph. And so that gives you ideas and stuff you can go out and shoot. And again, you'll see how I get the sharpness that I get in all my images. They're all very sharp, and it's all by using those higher f-stops. So don't be afraid of that. And don't let people tell you can't do that, because again, you've got tools to correct that nowadays. It's not like in the old days where you had, especially the sharpening programs today are so much better than they were back in the early days, when you had like unsharp mask and Photoshop and that. And in 2004, when I got my first digital camera, I was using Elements for post-processing, and they had unsharp mask in there. And, when you would sharpen, it would leave little halos around the subject, and it would get kind of pixelated a little bit. And so you got sharpening programs today that don't do that like it did in the old days. So it's much, much better. I know Topaz came out with that AI sharpening program. It's this phenomenal new sharpening program they came out with, and they show a blurry image and then they show it what it looks like when it's sharp after they sharpen this blurry image. It's amazing what it can do. So it's nothing to fear anymore. Most everything I shoot, I just shoot at the high f-stops because I know that I can maintain that. I'm not going to come home and look at a subject and say, oh, there's a little bit out of focus. I'm going to guarantee I'm going to get it all in focus, and I know that I have the tools to correct it. And also, like I pointed out, the lenses today, they're much better than the older lenses as far as handling diffraction. So you can just shoot at high f-stops. You don't need a focus stack. It's a waste of time, especially when you go out there in the field and try to photograph a flower, shooting 10, 12 images of that thing. I don't know where you live, but it's windy every day where I live. And it's almost impossible to shoot a series of images with a flower that's starting to move back and forth. It's just too hard of a thing to do, not to mention the hassle of having to shoot all these images and then go back and process them through a program. I can get the same thing done with one shot. So yeah, so don't be afraid of the high f-stops, but you got to make sure you're sharpening them. All right, gang. Well, no more questions. I'm gonna go watch TV.
Yep. And Topaz does do good work.
I have not used it, but I've had people swear by it, said that they were pretty amazed by that new program.
I shoot at 12,800 first thing in the morning when I capture birds. There's a 600 behind me.
Yeah.
And at 30 frames a second when you're firing out there, of course, at that early in the morning, you're going to hit 12,800 first thing in the morning.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
They'll clean up real nice, and you look and you can't tell it's noisy.
Yeah, I know. The tools are great nowadays.
Yes.
One thing nobody asked me about flash systems, or
Hey,
I'm surprised.
what do you know about flash?
I don't use a flash. All my images that you'll see on my website are all shot with natural light. Whatever light was available at the time, that's what I used. And sometimes the light's not great, but you know what? With the post-processing tools, I can fix all that stuff in post-processing. So yeah, never used any flash systems. I do have a video on using an LED light for a little fill light if you ever need it. I don't use it, but I do talk about it in my videos. And I do know photographers. I had Roman Kershawak. Some of you may know him. Was from New Jersey. He does a lot of speaking at photo conferences. He was at my macro conference in Cleveland in October, and he exclusively shoots everything with flash. And he swears by it. He says it works fantastic. So he has learned to perfect using a flash system. I tried it when I first got my first cameras, and I go, this thing is a total waste. I'm not doing this. So I just learned to shoot with natural light, which I find, so much easier than working with flash and all that. But there are people that use flash and they do get good results. So if you know what you're doing, you can do just fine with the flash. But I always prefer just using the natural light. So. But another thing I wanted to mention too, I do an annual macro conference. This will be my 9th year, but it's going to be different. It's called Creative Flower Photography Conference, and it's going to be up in Seekonk, Mass, which is on the border of Rhode Island, right next to Providence, Rhode Island. And it's at a hotel there. I've got Jackie Kramer, Donna Eaton's going to be there, Lisa Kuchera, and Padma. I never can remember how to pronounce her last name, but we're all doing something a little different. They'll be talking about shooting flowers on light tables and doing light painting with flowers. Jackie does amazing, flower photography with lens babies and all that. And so I'll be doing the everything in focus flowers, and we'll have just a ton of setups there that you bring your camera and your lenses, and you can actually photograph at the end of each day with things that you learn during the lectures. And it's going to be a great conference. But you can find it on my website. Just go to the workshop link, and when you hit the workshop link, the very top one will say Creative Flower Photography or Photo Conference, and you can click to see some of the information about how it's going to be set up. And then also you can sign up there. It's $249 for the Saturday and Sunday program. Okay, gang.
Before you leave, I do have a quick question. You, in the beginning, you did mention about using the cover over the flower to kind of block the sun and everything.
Yeah,
Did you
the
do that on
diffuser.
everything that you took and you showed tonight? Was
No, no, it would only be when you see there's a loss of color in the subject.
okay,
Yeah, and you can see it with your eyes. I mean, you can
Right.
see that it's washed out. So not everything. I would probably say that more things that I shoot don't have a diffuser over them. But if I see the faded look of the colors, then I'm going to throw that diffuser over top of it.
okay,
So it's not all the things. It's just, you know, if you're in a wooded area and you're shooting flowers, you've got that canopy of trees overhead that are blocking all that overhead light. So you don't get any of that loss of colors. But it's more like out in the open fields where if the flowers petals are running parallel to those white clouds is when you start seeing some of the washed out color.
okay.
Yeah, but when you look them up online, some companies call them translucents because they're not a solid white. It is a translucent material that allows some light to come through, but it just blocks all the bad light.
Yeah.
So when you look them up, it might be not listed so much as a diffuser as it is 12-inch translucent.
I have one. I just don't use it very often.
Well, you should always carry it with you.
Yeah.
Always have it in the field with you, just in case, that time comes when you might need it. But I always tell people, you can probably go back and look at some of your images and you might see washed out colors on some of your images. And that's all it was, just a matter of diffusing it. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciate you doing this evening. Thank you so much. And I hope
you.
everybody got something out of it. I
Yeah.
did.
My pleasure.
Try to remember it now.
It's always fun hanging out with photographers, right?
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you very
gang, I'm going
much.
to sign out.
Thanks,
All right,
Mike.
thank
All
you.
right.
Good night.
See y'all later.
Thank you.
All right. Well done, Marie.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
hope everybody got something out of it and enjoyed it, even if you're not into the macro. I like it. I just don't do it often enough, but it is fun at times.
Yeah. Do you want to do the photo contest now?
Sure.
Yeah, let's finish up. Do what we need to
Okay.
do.
Kim, can you let me share my screen?
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
Okay. There we go.
Before everybody takes off and you start, Phil,
Yeah.
I thank you for coming this evening. I really appreciate it. I don't recognize some of the people's names, but hope you come check us out. We got a couple of, I think a couple good speakers coming up.
Yeah, we have, just so everybody knows, next month, a friend of mine who lives up in Bowie, Maryland. I have some of his bio posted on the meetup page, but he's had photographs accepted across the country in a wide variety of venues. And he is willing to do a Zoom presentation on what his process is to find these venues for photographs to exhibit, and how he processes and goes through the systems to get his photographs accepted. And I mean, the number of places that he's had his photographs accepted is just enormous. And
Wow.
I don't know how he does it, but we're going to find out next month.
Sounds good.
So, and I think we're going to have, is it Brian? Yeah, Brian Lockwood is coming, who's
Yep.
done some, we actually know his parents. They
Oh,
go to the
really?
same, they go to the same church. His father passed away, but we went through the same church with his parents for many years.
But I've only known him as Jet Ski Brian, because every day if you follow him, he's out on the water on his jet ski. He's over doing whale watching plus fishing
Mhm.
every day. He must eat a lot of fish.
He does.
But anyway. So, but he's
Okay.
done a
So
presentation before.
here's our photo contest. We'll do it. We'll go through it pretty quickly. Our theme was black and white, sepia toned, and then of course our open category, which is whatever you think is going to impress the other members. And let's see, there we go. Here are our entries. The first A1, if you looked at it, was John Murphy's photograph. which I really like this one, John.
It was down in Yorktown, actually. It
Oh,
was down there when the temperature dropped overnight from like 50 to 20. That's why all the steam coming off the water.
The next one was by Mari. Once again, good photograph, Mari.
Is that
Thank-
out it? Was that out the, shoot,
Yeah.
I feel like I got the name of it now.
Yeah, there's an old place out in Smithfield, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was over in Surrey with the, before Christmas, with the nights before Christmas, and they had some old outbuildings and had rooms like that.
Yep, there's a
Lincoln's
bunch of them out
Castle?
here.
Yeah.
Next one is some strange guy, Phil Columbus. Yay, vote for me. This was our photo walk at Newport News City Center when they lit the Christmas tree up. This one was I remember this when Phyllis took this on the photo walk at Williamsburg. That's a very, very crisp photograph. I have to congratulate you on that, Phyllis.
F-32.
Exactly. The next one is Tom, another Williamsburg. Was this taken at the photo walk?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Your usual high standards. Next one is Chan Park. And if you look very carefully, you can see Chan's trained squirrel is in the tree up there. For those of you that don't know, Chan submitted, what was it, like 3 photographs in a row of a squirrel doing something spectacular. And we all criticized him for having a trained squirrel that showed up in all his photographs. The next one's Kemp's photograph. And I think Phyllis had a question. Where was this taken?
That was taken downtown Richmond when they were building the new Dominion Power building. It was at lunchtime. I was just walking around with another photographer, and we were just walking around, and we got a lot of stares because a lot of Mexican American guys there, and I guess they thought we were taking pictures for INS or something.
Good photograph. And the last is Carrie.
That would be me.
Yep. And Carrie, I love it. Is that a stage?
This was in Yonkers, New York at the Untermeyer Gardens. And they had a holiday, the gardens were all lit up. So I took this and just simply converted it to black and white.
I thought it was a really cool photograph. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
And
Phil,
the
I just want to say I like how you put the names on all of them, because in the past we only knew who shot the winning photograph. So I appreciate that added touch.
Very nice touch. Yes, I like that.
No problem. So the results, third place went to this amazing photographer from Newport News, Virginia.
Evan McCarthy.
Yay!
And just because I count the votes doesn't mean I put my thumb on the scale. So anyway. Second was John. And I must say the spread between first and second was like razor thin. So this was a very, very well-liked photograph. So congratulations, John.
Thank you.
And first place is Chan and his trained squirrels.
Yeah. Squirrel tipped the balance. That's all it is.
Yeah, you can see it right. See it right up there?
Yeah.
There he is, right there. Okay, so the next are the open. There he goes. First photograph was John's, and very crisp, John.
That's it's a 200 to 600. I captured that. I stumbled across these robins capturing this, and I was kind of surprised to see the berry just hung between his jaws.
Yeah, that's
Nice stuff.
amazing. Good job.
Thank you.
Next,
Oh,
Mark,
that's cool.
this is now you obviously did this. We should have shown
Yeah.
this when our
Yeah.
guest was here. That he would have loved this one.
Yeah.
Only one, that's 32 though.
If
Yeah.
32, right?
Yeah.
Phyllis is what time? Phyllis, you still there?
Yep.
Yeah, it
Okay,
looks like a
what
grackle.
is it and where'd you take it?
You have to unmute, Phyllis.
It looks like a grackle, Phil.
Okay.
You're
Well,
muted. You're muted, Phyllis. Turn
Oh,
your
I'm
microphone-
sorry.
There you
There
go.
So
Yeah.
where'd you take it and what is it?
Oh, you missed all of that?
Yes.
I took it through my kitchen window probably. And I have a bird feeder in my backyard. And I got that, it was probably my 250 lens. And it might have been my 300, but it's a while back. I don't remember.
Very good though.
Thank you.
The number 4 was Tom. And can you give us any background on where you took it?
That's Lindy Point out in Blackwater Falls, West Virginia.
Ah,
I went out there in October to do several days of photography. That was the last time I saw the sunshine.
The very first day.
The first night,
Oh,
no more sunshine, rain for 2 days.
oh my
dang.
God.
I
Well,
hate when that happens.
You got a good one here though.
Yeah.
All it
Yeah.
takes is one. Congratulations. Oh, this one, this is mine. This is in Nassau in the Bahamas. We were on a cruise and this is in front of the Gray Cliff Hotel, I think, which is an old colonial period hotel. From a photography point of view, the interesting aside on this is on the left part of the road, there were all these orange traffic cones that reflected in all the cars all the way up and down the street. And I photoshopped them all out. And I remembered to take out the orange on the reflections as well.
Good thing.
Yeah, I was glad I thought of that, but I got rid of all the orange in there too. But I like this one with the umbrellas and the schoolgirls that were walking down the street. I thought it was pretty cool. Chan's number 6. Chan, is Chan here tonight? I
No,
don't think so.
I didn't see him when I scrolled through a couple times.
Okay, I thought he was going to come, but
Walking a squirrel.
yeah, the squirrels are right up there in the tree again. Number 7 is Kemp's photograph. Kemp, where was this one taken?
that's in Richmond, over not far from Belvedere, near VCU area.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I liked it. It's not a squirrel, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. How much is that doggy in the window?
Yeah, how much? So 3rd place was Tom.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep. Your one good day succeeded in getting you 3rd place.
Thank you.
Once again, the margin between 1st and 2nd was razor thin, and John was 2nd.
thank you.
And
Chan again.
Jan Squirrel right there, he won him the award again.
Yeah.
But they were all really good. We got a lot of good entries and lots of votes too. So that was cool. I'm glad to see we're finally getting a lot of folks to look at the photos and take the time to vote.
Well, that's cool.
So for the February contest, the theme is going to be street art. So it does not just street, but art. So you got to be creative here. Open anything. The entry deadline is January 26th. And okay, the way the system works, okay, you email your photos to this email address. When I send out the notice, it'll give you all the information. Do not reply, do not send it, to reply, because then everyone gets everything. So just send it directly to that address. And that's all we got for the contest.
I do have an announcement though.
Okay.
Okay, because even on the end of your statement there, as far as everyone needs to be a paid member.
Yeah.
As of right now, since this is the beginning of the year, I start collecting the dues.
Yeah.
We do have a Zoom this month, obviously, and next month. So
Right.
March will be the first time we will be meeting in person if you want to pay there. Or I have sent out my address if anyone wants to mail me a check. We do have a couple months of kind of let things slide, but if you don't pay your dues, your photos will be disqualified eventually, and then the next person will move up. So please, if you're submitting pictures, these were great tonight. So send us your check. We do need, unfortunately, like every club, we do have bills we have to pay. So being a paid member does help.
Yep.
And I hope you would join us if you haven't already.
Yes.
So I think there's a couple people I guess they're members as far as being on their page, so they could get the sign in for tonight. So, I hope you will check us out and will join us.
Yes.
Okay. I know I kind of stutter. I'm sorry.
Well,
Anyway.
yes, I personally want to thank all the folks that showed up, and especially the new folks. Raise your hands if you're new. There you go. And
Yeah.
really, thank you
Can't
very
see
much.
Clark. We can't see Clark, and he's new.
Yes, but thank you all for coming out. We really, really do appreciate it. And we decided at one of the last in-person meetings that January and February, the weather can be bad. It's dark, it's cold, it's ugly. So it's a good time to have Zoom meetings where we can bring in speakers from outside the general area. And like I say, next month, we're going to have an interesting presentation from a photographer in Bowie, Maryland, who's a good friend of mine. And speaking of which, for the March meeting, what do you guys want to do for the March meeting? Do you want to do a photo critique, or do you want to do a little session on how the new masking tools work in Lightroom and Photoshop? And I'd be more than happy to give the presentation on the masking.
So, Phil, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Usually, I'm sorry, Ed Robinson does a presentation, and a lot of times March might be a good time for him because when it gets to fall, he usually takes vacation.
Right. But what I was just saying was,
Yeah.
is it something that the club would want? And I'd be more than willing to do that.
Yeah, I would be interested in either of those topics.
Okay,
Me too.
why don't I plan on doing a presentation? It'll probably be about 30 minutes of just the presentation, and then we can do Q&A. And John, I think you're willing to correct me when I make a mistake.
Works for me.
But basically, Lightroom, for those of you that don't know, the develop module in Lightroom is the same as the camera raw filter in Photoshop. So the skills that you learn in Lightroom are directly transferable if you want to move to Photoshop. So we can go over what the latest techniques are that Adobe has put in for masking and the artificial intelligence and some really cool features. Now, I'm not an expert. I may do something stupid and make a mistake, but I understand it enough, and I've played with it enough that I think I can give a good overview on how it works, and give you some resources that might help you in the future if you want to take the next step on using those. So I'll be more than happy to put that together. And we can do, I guess we'll do that one in person. That
Yeah.
sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kemp, do you think it would be a good idea to do it in person, but also Zoom it for those that are far away?
Yeah, we can I can, we can zoom it from there.
Okay.
And that way we can record it too and have a copy of it that we can look
Okay.
at.
That'll be great. Okay.
Yeah, and in June, I have John Barkley lined up for a
Yes.
presentation. I've done several workshops with him in the past. And he's real good. So I'm not sure. He's got several programs he does. I'm not sure
Mhm.
which one he's going to do, but he's pretty good too.
Right. And if anyone else is friends and neighbors with an internationally famous photographer, feel free to nominate them to come out and do something. Oh, is Jack Orton an internationally famous photographer?
No, it's not. No, it's not. I know. Okay. I do have a question though about the paying the dues. Where
Yes.
will we send the dues to, or how do we send those in to you?
I did post on on the site on our page as my address. So check it out, or I can repost it. You can mail it to me, or are you local?
Yes.
Yes.
Newport News.
Okay, that, or was it March, February? Yeah,
Yeah.
March we'll be meeting in person. You can pay in March.
Okay. Then, and what site was that posted to? Was that the
It's on our
Meetup?
Facebook page with the.
Oh, your
recommended-
Facebook page. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's on
not
Meetup, Marie,
Facebook.
not Facebook.
Not Facebook. I
Oh.
don't know why I keep saying Facebook. It's on our JRCC meetup page.
Okay. Mhm.
But you can do that if you don't want to mail it in March. We'll do it.
Okay. Thank you.
And there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot.
Um,
Oh, well, I'll think of it later.
Marie,
Yes.
Marie, you didn't have your zip code on that address.
Oh, I didn't?
No, that's why I asked you for your zip code. So you might want to redo that. And
I'll go
include
back and
all
check
of
it.
all of the zip code even. Okay.
Okay.
In fact, I'm on the meetup group page right now, and I don't see the information about how much the dues are and where to send them and so on.
Okay,
Marie,
I'll go back and check it. If anybody wants it right now, we've got a pencil, I'll definitely give it to you.
why do we do that?
Put it in you want to put it in the chat? And then they
Put
can
it in-
just copy it out of the chat.
Excellent idea.
Put it in, I didn't hear, I catch it, I'm
Put
sorry.
it in the chat.
Put it in the
window.
chat.
Oh, why don't I do that? That would be easier. Never typed anything in the chat.
Because for reasons of privacy, you might not want to post your address on the internet for everybody.
Well,
Right, yeah.
Marie's
Put it in the
lonely,
chat, it
she's
won't-
got
Well, wait a minute, I can't even do it right.
MARIE.
Yeah. I hit the wrong thing. I hit enter, but not everything.
Just
Not
do
correctly.
it line by line and we'll get it.
Yeah.
103, LORI. Oops. Gee, I don't type very well either.
While she's doing that, Phil, do you want to discuss the file sizing?
Oh, yeah, something that came up at the last contest. Meetup has file size limitations for the files that I upload for the contest. And if you go to events and you want to, like we put a photo walk or something and you go and you want to put your photos up, it's a 15 megabyte file size. But the other thing that's interesting is they have a 24 megapixel limit. So some of the newer cameras, like the Sony A7R4s and the Sony A7R5s, the
Canon R5.
the R5 Canons, the Nikon's what is it, the Z9s?
Yeah, the Z9.
They
Gonna have the
produce
same
some
problem.
really, really big files, and they're producing, like I think you said, the A7R4s, a 30 megapixel file. And so Meetup chokes. It says, sorry,
Yeah.
can't upload your file.
A7R4 is 61 megapixels.
Yeah, and it's 60 megapixels. So Meetup won't take those. So if you can, shrink them down to 24 megapixels or less. If you can't, send it to me in whatever form you want. And in Lightroom or Photoshop, I'll drop it down to a pixel size that'll post up. But if you could do it yourselves, that would be very, very
Hey,
helpful.
Phil,
Yeah.
Phil, if you export the file in Lightroom, just
Mhm.
go into the file size and tell it to limit it to 4,000 by 4,000,
Yep.
which total is 16 megapixels. You won't have a problem.
Right.
Because if you try to go too much bigger, like it's going to puke or it's going to choke when you export it.
Yeah.
It's the same problem I ran into when I was running it. So
Yep.
if you just limit it to 4,000 by 4,000 at 240 pixels per inch, you're not going to have any problems.
Okay.
And Lightroom will do it for you and you don't have to think.
Right. Oh, I like not thinking.
Yeah, it just makes
I'm
life
retired. I don't
easy.
want to think anymore.
And
so-
you can save that as a preset, and I save it as a preset, and I just call it JRCC.
Mhm.
And every month I go in and I save it and export it, and there it is.
We can even do a class on that someday.
Yeah. We can cover that in March
Okay.
for that matter, and just show people exactly what it'll do. It'll take about 2 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. Presets in Lightroom are really, really cool. You can do some good stuff with those.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts or fun stories to tell?
Well,
Anybody
Phyllis-
been anywhere and taken some great photos?
Not yet. Phyllis did put the price on the thing
Yep.
on our
There it
page if
is.
anybody hasn't seen it yet. And as far as per family, that's in your household, not your daughters and sons that are out married and gone or whatever.
Oh,
Just saying.
Are we going to have a year-end contest thing for the people from 2022?
I hadn't thought about that, to be quite honest. What does everybody think? Do we have somebody that could judge that?
I'm sure we could find someone, off the top of my head right now, I don't know, but we've used several people the last few years.
Okay.
But did we want to have like an end of the year party or get together someplace soon? Well, not this month, probably.
No.
Oh,
What do you think?
no one's saying anything. Uh-oh, everybody asleep?
The year's
Yeah,
over,
I'd love
Marie.
to-
We need to have a beginning of the year party.
Yeah, we need a beginning of the year. Good thought. Yeah.
We did it last year in March at the church.
Mhm.
And I think we just kind of brought things to pass around to eat or something like
Yeah,
that,
we did.
instead of going to a restaurant. But I mean, I don't care because I didn't win anything last year, so I'm not in the running. But I thought, that some of the people might like to see, a little reward for what they did, since that's sort of the incentive that we wanted people
Okay,
to
why don't
put
we do
in
that?
for the photo contest.
Why don't we do that? Marie and Kemp and John and Phyllis, why don't we, do it like an email or maybe even a phone conference and talk about that.
Well, do we
Tom?
have anything scheduled for March? Let me look.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do the how to do that masking in Lightroom.
Oh,
and
okay,
Photoshop.
I was just wondering, do the kind of I guess like our banquet, do it March or just kind of.
Do we have
do it at
anything in
another night?
April?
Isn't that
April's
Yeah, we have
Brian,
a
isn't it?
speaker.
yeah?
we have a
Okay.
April's Brian.
Yeah,
How about May?
March would probably be a good time to do it.
but do it another night or do it on club meeting night?
We do the club meeting night.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
If that's for
Start
me, I'm
early.
not here.
We could still do it and have refreshments and then, Phil, you
Sure.
can do your program. I mean, is it real intense or a lot of?
Oh, it's gonna be so intense, Marie. You're just gonna be sweating bullets.
A
Oh, Marie, you're not going to be able
to.
to eat. I tell you, you're going to be so clenched up.
Bring your workout clothes.
Hey, this is Greg. I have a suggestion.
Yes.
So I follow Phil on Facebook and I know how he cooks, him and Leah. So I nominate them to be the caterers.
Leah can be the bartender too.
Hey, we're meeting at a church. Is that allowed? I'm just saying.
And not at our church. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
But no.
okay. That's why I'm asking.
Well, we could do mocktails.
There you go. We just don't tell anybody that they're
Exactly.
stronger.
We could do it. We could do it in our living room, kitchen, dining room combo if you want.
So do we
What do you-
want to do that? Do we want to do that for March and set that in? And we should still have time for Phil to do a program.
Yeah, it'll make it easier if I don't have to speak for an hour.
That'll be, well, if you don't want to,
No,
that's
and if
fine.
everybody's eating, then they won't be able to ask questions. Their mouths will be full.
Exactly.
True. True.
Okay, let's do this then. In March, we'll do the masking in Lightroom and Photoshop. Now, when we did that, have the blind or somebody else review all the photographs, did we do was it just the winners, or was it first, second, and third, or just the first place winners that were?
No, it was
second, and
first.
third.
We
First, second, and
had
third?
we have a couple of honorable mentions as well.
Okay. But
So
you know
it's
what I
just-
mean? Just was it? I was just wondering, was it just the first place winners, or was it everything?
It's
Anybody-
everything.
Oh, no. On the voting part, we did it for first, second, and third
Okay.
on the picks, and then they selected from that.
Okay.
And we had first, second, and third place winners with the top. Then we had a top winner. And then if there was anybody honorable mentions, we got honorable mentions. Am I right, Marie?
Yep.
Okay.
And the top place won, I don't know, $50, and then we went down from that for the first, second, and third. The honorable mentions, we just thanked them for that.
No,
Recognized them.
actually, all the honorable mentions got a little bit. I have it written down. I just don't
Okay.
have it handy.
Okay.
I think it was like $100 for like the top place was not first. It was the like photographer of the year,
Yes.
Right.
and then it was second and third.
Okay.
And then a couple of honorable mentions, and like I said, I can't remember what the money value was on each of those.
And
I
we
have it
went
written down.
through, John went through and we made the policy, which Tom Carmine and is familiar with, and John and I, so that if, let's say Chang, the person who's checking all the photos, decided Chang won first, second, third, and top, he could only get the top, and then the
Yes.
next would get, the first, the second, so that somebody wouldn't get all of the awards.
Right.
Yeah, that
Okay.
happened one year, because I
So,
think
yeah.
I won 3 categories, which was hilarious, because it was like, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't win top photographer, but I think I won first, third, and honorable mention. It was like, okay.
Okay. I'll send a note out to some of you folks, and we'll see if we can find a either a
Phil
local-
Dunn,
Hmm?
Phil Dunn did them one time,
Did
judged
it
them.
twice.
And Wayne Berry has
I
done
say
them, I
Wayne
think.
Barry, Wayne might do them.
Yeah.
I did,
Yep.
oh, shit, I
let's-
can't, my brain's gone dead.
Let's not waste time here. We'll get together and figure that out, and pick a victim. I mean a judge to do that.
Yeah.
And then anyone that's gonna come in March can just bring a snack or a non-alcoholic refreshment.
Oh.
I think we should put a sign up sheet, kind of see what people might want to bring. If you want to bring some drinks, or bring some
Okay.
sodas in, or bring your own.
Yeah, I think that's a
Um,
good idea.
Or kind of some whatever refreshments, so we don't have a bunch of potato chips.
Would somebody like to volunteer to take charge of putting the refreshment list together? Carrie?
It depends, what's the date of the,
March, what's the first Thursday in March?
Fifth, second, something like that.
Second,
It's before we go to Florida,
Yeah.
the second.
yeah, it's the
Okay,
second of March.
2nd.
Hmm.
I'm sure that's, something Carrie could do.
well, it's a matter of whether or not I'm even gonna be in the state. where am I going to be doing this? Through Facebook or where?
On the
Uh,
meetup page.
Probably the meetup page would probably be
The meetup
easiest.
page.
Not many
Okay.
people do the Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
speaking of that, we'll do one thing after Carrie agrees to do this.
yeah, I can do that.
Okay,
Yay.
thanks for volunteering.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah. Speaking of which, on our Facebook page and our meetup page, and remember, we've also got a Flickr group. And if you post pictures someplace, make sure that that especially are associated with the club, make sure you tag them or include them in like our Flickr group. And on Facebook, put them on the page so that number one, so that other members can see what you're doing. And number two, I mean, that's advertising. If we want the club to be bigger and to grow and to do things, one of the things you have to do is get the name of your club and what it does out there. And one of the ways we do that is through social media to say, this is what we're doing. Like whenever I post photographs, like if you look on Facebook tonight for our new Recipe Thursday, there's a hashtag in there for the James River Camera Club, because we changed the time because we had a meeting of the James River Camera Club. So we're tagged there. So social media is important. And the only way we're going to, make sure the club continues and grows and folks come together and have fun is if people know about it. So let's continue to do that.
I have a question now that I've been volunteered.
No, you did it on your own. I had nothing to do with it.
It's so brave of you, Carrie.
Sure. I need to know when, like, you're going to make the event on Meetup so that I can start, posting and saying, let's get a.
I'll put that up tonight.
Okay. And then the other thing is my request to join the Meetup.
I just saw that, Carrie, and I've got to remove somebody else before I can add you on. So
okay.
It'll be about tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All right.
So, and then I know not a lot of people use Facebook, but some people use Facebook? Because then we could get,
We could, it's just no one, I think
Do it
Steve
on
LaFave
both.
set up the Facebook page, but not very many people use it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
anybody
it
know
would
it
be
using
there.
Marie, speaking of which, can you talk to what's his name? Lefevre,
Steve LaFave.
Steve. Can you get him to put me as an admin on the page?
Who, me?
Yes. if
The
you could.
original admin, whoever set up the page has to make other
Right.
admins.
Yes.
Okay, I'll see, because he's not even in the club anymore, so
I
maybe
know.
we can get a couple people to,
But we need to get him to
Yeah.
put one of us or several of us on as
Yeah.
admins for the page. Otherwise, we can't make any changes or do
The only
anything.
other thing you could do is just have him take it down and make a new one, since if we can't get a hold of him.
Oh,
Yeah.
he lives in my neighborhood, so I can
Okay.
always walk down the street and bang on his door if I have to.
There you go.
there you go.
Okay. Anybody
it
have
was a
any other good
I
stuff?
thought it was a great meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was nice.
I'm
It was really
I'm
I
nice.
hope
sorry we
everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't meet together, but we couldn't even use the church tonight because but they had done the rug in there and we wouldn't be able to use that social hall. We could have used Maury's room, but yeah, so it was good we did Zoom.
Yes.
It was a great presentation.
Yes, he was really good.
I liked him the first time I saw him with the other club. So I thought he did a good job covering everything. And
Well, you know
and
what
I happen
amazed
to
me?
like macro. I don't know how many other people do, but get out and try it. It's
You know what
you know.
amazed me when he was saying that he makes fake backgrounds and carries them out into the woods and puts them behind flowers. I mean, that was hilarious. I mean,
But it works.
all these people, that are struggling, to get the right distance and take the background.
Yeah.
Oh, he said, I just put a background in front and shoot the photo.
Yeah,
That's
it works.
great. That was so cool. I just thought that was hilarious.
It's no different than what what we're gonna learn about masking, right?
Yeah.
You think
Yeah,
about what
we're-
you can do with
camera.
masks.
We're gonna fake things in electronically, you know.
Yeah,
we're just gonna
Might as
do
well
that.
fake it all.
Yep. We're gonna make your real more real.
Kind of like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland painting the roses red, you know?
Oh, I like that.
Thank you.
That's why I married her, you know?
It's not just the food and the drinks, Carrie. It's a literary bon mot.
I had a couple of new people.
Hey,
We aren't
we know
totally
it's-
this
we know it's
crazy all
really
the
about the
time.
drinks.
Well, it is, but you know.
Oh, God. Okay. It's almost 9 o'clock. Do you know where your children? No, I'm sorry. So anyway, thank you everybody for coming. It's been a lot of fun. Hey, why don't we do this again? Say next month?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.